This is episode 44 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 44 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Kory Mackinnon on the show, and you're not going to want to miss this one because Kory talks about everything from getting his first property to the intricacies of doing a development on an old church. He's taking an existing church that he bought for $150,000 and he's turning it into an apartment building, and it's going to be worth $5 million when he's done. He walks us through the fundamentals of that project and how he's creating $900,000 of equity in that deal. In the episode, Kory talks about how he found a mentor at the age of 30 and bought his first property, and how he proceeded to retire himself at the age of 36. He's a fast actor, he's an aggressive investor, and he's got a great story and a great mindset. I know you're going to love this one. Some quick housekeeping. If you have not already taken a moment to join the Greater Hamilton REI meetup group, please take a moment and do that now. We do meet monthly with the exception of December, but we're back in the new year and we're constantly building our network. Lots of investors come out, share stories, share ideas, and help each other grow. It's one of my favorite things to do on a monthly basis, and I would really love the opportunity to meet you in person. So if you haven't already, check the show notes and join that group. You can also reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at the Andrew Hines if you'd like to connect or if you'd like me to send you that link. Without further ado, please enjoy episode 44 with Kory Mackinnon. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Kory Mackinnon on the show all the way up from Sarnia. Kory, thanks for coming on.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure.
So we've been trying to arrange this for a while, and you're a long way away. So
no, I appreciate your patience.
Well, no problem. And I knew it was worth it because you're doing big things. I know I hear your name all the time, and I'm always like, what's that Kory guy doing? He needs to come on the podcast and tell everyone about it. So if you wouldn't mind, do you mind just giving me a little bit of a bio about yourself, where you come from, what you do, Sure. And we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So right now I'm 43 years old. I didn't even buy my first rental property till I was 30. So for all the listeners out there that are, in their 20s and they're like, oh man, I still haven't bought something, like, don't worry. Like, you can definitely catch up, because I was able to catch up and then retire by 36. So born and raised in Sarnia, Ontario. And I guess I got exposed to real estate a little bit through my father. Like, he had a rental property. I remember growing up, one of my first childhood memories was actually being in we used to live on the main floor of a duplex, and there's a little old lady that lived upstairs that kind of came with the house, right? So kind of got exposed to it at a young age, not at a big level, but yeah. So then I went to, school for sports and rec admin, never really pursued that career. It was kind of like half, kinesiology, half business. And I really liked the business portion of my college degree. And I ended up working for a student painting franchise company. So I did that.
Like right College Pro or something like that?
Yeah, it was actually their competitor. So Student Works Painting.
Okay,
red, white, and black signs. So I did really well in that. And I ended up moving up in the company several times to the point where I was the vice president of Canada for that division for Eastern Canada. And nice. I stayed there for 17 years total. Great company, loved the culture, but at the end of the day, it wasn't my company. I had a chance to buy in on a small level, and it was very expensive at the time. So I just said, okay, well, instead of buying in there, why don't I just keep buying more real estate, right? So probably the big segue, gateway drug for me was, when the Wealthy Barber book came out and Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out. These were all coming out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's really what got me interested in real estate. That, hey, there are other ways. You don't just have to go work for money. There's ways that you can just make your money and your assets work for you. So I'm a big numbers guy anyways. I was always getting, A pluses or 95 or 100% in math in school. So
the numbers need to make sense for you. What's your background as far as your parents go? Were they weren't real estate investors, I take it?
Well, my dad was a dabbler. So he came from that work hard era, like work hard, get a good job, go to school sort of thing. He never went to school. So he just ended up doing the blue collar stuff all the time. And that was fine, right? Back in the 60s and 70s, like if you didn't like your job, he would tell me stories of just like, you just quit and you just go get another job. Like there were so many people that were hiring at the time. It just everything was booming, right? And labor was fairly cheap. So, single income, mom did some things to make some money, like hairdresser, delivered flyers, babysat, all the regular stuff, right? So my parents were kind of entrepreneurial, but never in a big way. And I guess, I kind of took business as like a competition or a sport, right? Like my paper route when I was in grade 5, we ended up tripling the size of the paper route, and they had to cut it up into different routes when I was done, right? So,
okay.
Yeah, that was kind of like my entry into entrepreneurship. I just loved it ever since then.
So you were like kind of the Gary Vee entrepreneur since you were a little kid kind of thing?
A little bit, yeah. I like cutting grass, doing odd jobs. To me, I just, maybe it's the wrong mentality to take, but I was trading my time for money at first. But, you build up a nest egg and then you can do something with that nest egg. But I don't know. I just like that satisfaction of, you go earn your money and then you can actually go do things or buy things that you want to do, right? My parents thought I was crazy, but I bought a $650 bike in grade 7. I was just like, this is like my car. This is my ticket to just roll and do what I want to do. So.
Okay. So you were saving up right from being a kid, just finding a way, hustling, getting things done to kind of get what you wanted.
Yeah, always a good saver because I was actually at the tail end of some of the high interest rates, right? I remember being a kid and saying, okay, I got $300 in the bank. What's this $10 and $20 pop into my account? My dad would explain interest and everything else. Yeah. Of course, over time, it just fell off the cliff. It was very nominal after a couple of years, but it was good to see some of that.
Oh, I never really thought about it from that. So you're saying back when the whole like mortgage crisis in like the early 80s, when it was like 18, 19, 20% interest, your savings account actually did well then.
Yes, your savings account would also pay out pretty well too. Like they were paying 10, 12 type of percent. That's actually how my father-in-law was able to retire early. Like he was just making money, keeping it in the bank, getting interest on it. And it was growing exponentially back.
Yeah, rates shot up, and it actually served a few people. I think it hurt quite a few more than it served. But that's actually I've never heard a story of somebody saying that was actually a good thing for them.
Yeah, and I think the banks obviously got smart, and they just thought, okay, well, we don't have to give it all this interest, and it totally changed.
Yeah, they just decided that they would keep it, which they actually still do today. I don't know if you ever, like, you're a numbers guy. I am too. So I see back when the whole prime rate drops were happening, we have. For those who aren't from Ontario, Canada, in Canada, we have prime rate, which the banks tie their variable rates to. So we'd have a discount off of prime of, 0.25% or 0.75%. Well, every time prime would drop, rather than give the full difference, they would just reduce the discount off the bank rate that they were, the Bank of Canada overnight lending rate. Sorry, I misexplained that. So basically, they've just been pocketing the difference every chance they get. And people don't notice. I'm like, is somebody going to say something about this?
It's crazy, right? It is crazy. So be the bank yourself, so you don't have to use keep all your money in the bank.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like, the banks are regulated by our government, and they make changes and policies that are supposed to affect the public, but then somehow the bank finds a way to take that change and just use it to profit them more. But yeah, be the bank. I like the way you put it. Know the rules of the game. Know what people can do, and know what you can do. Is a big part of that for sure. So your first property, 30 years old. How'd you buy it?
Yeah, great question. So I actually started looking at properties years before that. I think it was maybe 25 or 26 years old. I'm like, okay, I've been out, I've had a job. Now I'm saving up some money. I'm going to go buy a house, right? But what I didn't realize was in one of my first years in corporate, I was kind of spending money as if I was earning what some of my peers were making. And then we had a slow year that year. So I kind of spent up here and earned down here. And I actually missed a couple payments. So that gave me a B- rating on credit. And when I was going to get approved for mortgages, one of the first properties I looked at was a little duplex. I already had all the roommates lined up and everything, and didn't get approved for the best mortgage rate. And I was being stubborn. I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do this deal then. I'm going to just wait. And they call it, sitting in the penalty box or whatever, let your credit improve. And I basically just house hacked. So I found a really good 2-bedroom apartment in London, Ontario. Great city. I always wanted to live in London. So finally my job and my career got me into London after being in, Toronto and Cambridge and Kitchener, landed in London, and found this place that had a double living room and 2 bedrooms. So I took one of the living rooms, I put up some China walls, made that my room. And I was renting out the 2 other rooms and basically living pretty much for free. Some months when the utilities were higher, there was more expenses, but so I did that for 4 years. And I was learning actually from my landlord. So he had about 20 properties, and I'd go out for lunch or out for breakfast with him once in a while. And being that I was in like a student painting company, I was like, hey, if you ever need painting done, like I'm your guy, or I'll bring my crews over and just charge $20 an hour or whatever. So he taught me a lot of the fundamentals, like just some of the things he would look for, like good brick construction, properties need to have parking, no weird Frankenstein type renovations inside the house, things you can't change. Like you can't change the size of a bedroom if there's no extra square footage inside of a house, right? So just some of the basic things like that. And we would talk about the property I was living in. So I was living in the back of a sixplex, and he would throw out numbers once in a while. He'd be like, if you ever want to buy this place, it'll be 350,000. And then it was 365, and then it was 380. And then I was like, yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested. Like, what do I need to do? And he's like, go get it pre-approved. And he was just one of these guys, just one-liners, and just, very busy guy. So one of my franchisees called me up one day and said, Kory, this is before text messaging, because I don't think there was really texting back in 2005. They said, Kory, there's a for sale sign on your sixplex that you're living in, and where we always have our team meetings and stuff like that. I was like, whoa, Mark was supposed to tell me if he ever sold that place. So he listed it high, and it kept falling through on inspection because it had like asbestos tile roof and galvanized plumbing and some knob and tube. So I think I got to the point where I was like, Mark, like, why is there always like people come in and inspectors come in and viewings, and there's been like a couple dozen of them. And he's like, I know. So we should actually talk, because this has fallen apart 3 times on inspection. So he paid his realtor a commission just for doing all whatever pre-work that he did. And he said, look, do you still want to buy this thing? I said, yes. Like, I know it's a big property. I got to figure out how to do it. So I pulled from my, my RRSP, did the first time home buyer loan there. Got an advance on my commission at work. Like, I basically begged, borrowed, stealed to come up with $106,000 down payment so we could close on this sixplex.
So you did 20% down, or?
Back then you had to have 25% down.
25.
So it was a pretty significant down payment. And so it went a little bit bigger on my first one, but I think it was a great lesson, because it's almost like, I tell people, it's almost like running a marathon in your first running race. Instead of doing like a 5K or something that's a little bit easier, anybody could do that. Not everybody could qualify for a sixplex right off the bat. So,
well, that's a good way to start your portfolio on steroids.
Yes.
Most people are starting off with a single family. I know that's how I started. It's one of the things, like, I actually regret not doing this, because I started working right after I graduated university in London, and I wish that I had just bought the property that I was living in. Or, downtown, I had a place, 3-bedroom, 2 roommates living in there. If I had been smart enough to do that, then could have done the 5% down, could have rented out the 2 rooms, lived for free. I was paying like $550 a month. I could have been paying $550 a month anyway, but building equity and,
that's right,
kind of benefiting all that. It took me, until 24. That was when I was 21. It took me 3 years to kind of finally put that together. 3 years too long, I say.
I know. Your focus goes elsewhere, right? Your focus is on your career. Your focus is on your friends, your family. And access to information back then just wasn't as easy to find, even as today. Like, there weren't as many podcasts and YouTube channels and information out there, right? So if we all had a crystal ball, we'd all be zillionaires. But we just didn't know. Nobody really knew how much property values would start taking off, right? So...
But the fundamentals were there, right? We could have seen, inflation is 2%, and that's pretty fundamental. And, I don't think 4 or 5% appreciation rates are, but we see that, 2% makes sense. We know our mortgage is going to pay down 3% a year, something like that. So just based on the 2% gain you're getting, if you're only putting 5% down, you're doing quite well. I think that works out to 20% return on investment or more. It does. Yeah. If you're 20% down on a $100,000 house and it goes up by 2%, that's 2,000 on 20 grand down. That's 10%. Those fundamentals were there, but I don't know if you can relate to this, but when I graduated university, I graduated with a business degree and absolutely no idea what I was going to do with that. I'd seen real estate. I'm like, how could I do that? Like, I had no idea. I didn't think I could qualify. I was on a 2-year contract. Just a whole lot of no clue, because I knew what school was telling me is like, you should be investing in your stock portfolio. We're getting 3-4%. I'm like, but my student loans are 3 to 4%.
Yes.
So that doesn't work.
What's the thing, right? Like, a lot of these popular books and things of that nature, they'll recommend that you get into real estate, but they don't really tell you how to get like 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 doors, right? So it's they'll say, yes, go in house hack, or go live in a duplex and live for free on the main floor or whatever, but they won't actually tell you how to go, okay, this is how you scale it up really fast, right? This is how you can burr your properties. So fortunately my first landlord, he was a big burr guy. Like, he would just turn and burn them, right? Just, fix them up, get it refinanced, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one.
So he just figured that out on his own?
Yeah, he actually, his very first property, he was 18 years old, and I think the owner of that property gave him a big vendor take back, so he got into the game early. And then he got business partners and, just doing all the right things. He was definitely working full-time in real estate, and it was great to learn that from a person.
That's fantastic to just have that mentor. I have a similar kind of mentor relationship that really helped me get off my butt and do something. For those who aren't familiar, BRRRR, buy, renovate, refinance, rent, repeat, in some order like that. And then what was the other one? We said vendor take back. There's a vendor take back mortgage. That's when the seller provides you financing. That's actually a thing. I don't think I've ever done that personally, but I imagine you've done it a few times in your travels.
Yeah, I've done. I've been on both sides of it. So I've given a vendor take back or held a small second on a property to make the deal work, and I've also done some where we've bought and we've the price was one thing, so we gave them the price they were looking for, but then we negotiated the terms we wanted, which was for them to hold a bit of a second mortgage on it.
Yeah, and just since we're on this topic, what do you think the main selling point is if you want to get a seller? I'm assuming that it's probably easier to do it off market when you're negotiating that. But if you want to get a seller to agree to a vendor take back mortgage, what's the real reason that they would want to do that?
Great question. So I find that it usually works out in a few different situations. So it works out when the person has a lot of equity in their property. Typically they can see the benefits for capital gains purposes and that sort of thing. So you won't have the full capital gain in that year. If you do a vendor take back, it gets spread out. And that's probably more a question for an accountant or whatever, for someone to go look at a spreadsheet on it, but there are some benefits to it. Or if they're just naturally kind of like an entrepreneur, or they're an investor themselves, they're usually a little more open to it as well. Or if they've lent money before. So, or if they're just, I guess the third scenario could be they're just uber motivated. Like that's the only option they have. So they have to take the option that's in front of them. Yeah.
And I think that would depend slightly on your market too. Like how much of a seller's market is it? If it's not much of a seller's market, you kind of can negotiate a few more perks on your side, right?
True.
Yeah, I actually had a guy offer it to me. I went to see his place off market. It was a mixed use. It ended up not being really a property I wanted to own because it was right on a main street, but he just came right out. He's like, yeah, man, I don't mind doing a VTB as long as you put in at least, $50,000. I'll do that. And I'm like, oh, educated seller. Because I imagine, if you've done it a few times, you've probably had to educate people on it once or twice.
We've had some deals fall apart by trying to push for it. It's one of those things where I know some investors, they've done almost all their deals with vendor takebacks. It's one of those things out there. It definitely is out there, and sometimes it's worth when you're putting offers out to go, okay, here's my all cash offer, here's my offer with a vendor takeback, and you can always weight them differently. Is that the one with the vendor takeback may be a little more appealing, or maybe they're getting a higher purchase price, or they're getting more of the terms out of the deal that they're looking for, right? So I used to always think that it was just price, but lots of times price is kind of secondary, right? Like price is important, but the closing date and can they keep certain things in the house? Like a lot of those things are just as important as price, because people attach monetary value to all those other things too.
I absolutely agree. And in fact, I'm looking for people with a certain circumstance so that I can negotiate. Because if price is all they care about, then odds are their property is not going to work for me.
That's right.
I'm looking to make money on the buy. So I need to be able to add value in some other way. Can I close really fast for you? Can I allow you to leave all your garbage in the house and not renovate, not clean, and just leave? Yes, I can do these things.
That's right. Well, you got to look for motivation. If there's no motivation on that other side, it makes negotiating an uphill battle, right? But when there is motivation on that other side, like I'm sure you've heard that, like the 6 Ds before, the 5, some people have 5 Ds, 6 Ds, 7 Ds, but
no, tell me.
Okay. So there's typically when somebody is motivated, there's usually either issues personally in their life or there's issues with the property itself. And sometimes you get the perfect storm where they kind of collide together and you're getting both. So one thing that I teach some of the people that mentor under me is, so there's death, disease, divorce, too much debt. They could be totally displaced. They could have gotten relocated with work, moved to a different city, and then they're stuck with this property, or they're just like a disgruntled landlord. They're kind of like an accidental landlord sometimes. Like people, two people come together, they get married, they're like, oh, let's hold on to one of our properties and use it as a rental, and they don't have any training, They don't have the right personality to be a landlord, and they get fed up pretty easily. I'm a big believer that there's no such thing as a bad tenant, just like an uneducated person behind the wheel of that property, right? So they haven't taken the time to learn anything about being a landlord or put the right person in that role. It takes that manager type leader personality that can manage people and projects really well. So those are the 6 Ds. And whenever I have an incoming call for somebody that wants to sell their property, we're usually looking for something along those lines.
Right. And if you don't hear it, like for instance, I put out some signs and I got some calls, and the lady basically says, oh, well, we just don't feel it's right to pay a realtor 6%. It just feels wrong to me when we could just put a deal together with somebody off market. And I'm like, if that's your motivation and you just want to get top dollar, like, I don't want to waste my time. And I don't know how you handle those calls if you just put them to bed pretty quick. Yeah,
like we'll try to continue asking them a few more questions. Just, hey, what's your sense of the value of your house? Because sometimes people they're a couple of years behind on the value of their homes. But yeah, some people just like literally think we're just another alternative to, instead of just the hassle of going through multiple realtors and showings and all that kind of stuff, they can just, we'll buy it for full price. That's not necessarily the case, but we help people that have real estate problems. Yep. We can help, obviously what you're saying, close quickly and all those other types of things too.
I think that's the value. A friend of mine, I told this story before, but yeah, he just had, he had an opportunity to, one of my flyer leads, I sent it to him because I was too busy to deal with it at the time. Hindsight, that kind of sucks. But anyways, he got the deal, $95,000 for a semi-detached house in Hamilton, if you can imagine. And she just could not list. He hasn't finished with it yet. He did close and he wanted to reno it. I'm like, man, don't do that. Literally just close and sell it, like list it. It was worth like 170 right there. So he got it for, 60%. He could have just flipped it right back on the market. And
big time.
That would have been what I would have done there. But anyways, he's renoing it. Probably will sell it for like 200, 220 or 30 or something like that, and make roughly what he would have if he had just flipped it right back on. But hey, all the same, she had to close. So, and he told her, he's like, well, if you want more, go list it. Like he told her, and she's like, oh, I want 180. He's like, no, that's not happening. And finally, he says, I got to do 90. And she kept coming down 150, 130, 115. Oh, that's my final 115. Hey, I appreciate that, but that's not going to work. And then finally, they compromised in 95K. But she had to close by the end of that month. And it's like, well, there's no way. He sent her to 3 different realtors. Like, yeah, you can call any one of these, ask them what they could do. But by the time you list, get offers, conditions, and then close 3 months later, that's not meeting the timeline. So yeah, motivation is huge, right?
It is. And I like to tell people, it's not just in real estate. I mean, it's in any type of business or commodity type thing out there. You want to get a cheap deal on a cell phone. There's people out there that flip cell phones and people that need to sell their cell phone at a pawn shop. Same with cars, same with coins, same with all kinds of different things that have value. Same with businesses. There's going to be people that are selling their businesses less than what they're worth, because they are in a situation where they have to just cash out, or they don't want to have anything to do with it. Maybe they inherited it, and they just don't want to have anything to do with it anymore, right? And I think some people also just want to give a deal to the next person. They're like, hey, I got a good deal on this house back in the day. I want to leave some meat on the bone for the next person too, which is always nice. So
maybe you can guide me to finding that type of person.
They're out there. They're definitely out there. I think there's different personality types, right? There's some people out there that literally will fight tooth and nail to get every single penny out of their property. Sometimes they end up dying on their own sword though. It's just our strengths can also become our weaknesses sometimes. So if you're really, just a negotiator about everything, like you're going to actually turn people off in the process. Yeah. I think a fair enough deal is a fair enough deal. If everybody's getting what they need out of the situation, great, do the deal.
Okay, so for some context, one, in your rental portfolio, what are you up to now in terms of numbers of doors?
We are over 60 doors. And once our church project is renovated or finished, that's going to get us up to 100 real quick. So.
Oh, and you're keeping it? Yes. Okay, I saw a video on Matt McKeever's channel, you talking about that one. So
yeah. So we've literally been, so maybe for people background here, we bought a 12,000 square foot building, former church in Sarnia, and we converted it to get approval for multifamily construction. So we're going to put somewhere between 32 and 35 apartments in it.
Okay.
So it's going to be a big project, and it's going to grow from 12,000 square feet to probably 24,000 square feet with the additions and blowing off the roof and going up an extra story. So it's a lot
That's
of work.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we are on this topic, well, just before we get into it, because I want to talk about development, because it's always an interesting topic. It doesn't come up that often, people who are actively doing it on this show. So when I get the opportunity, I want to. But just on the note, before we get onto that, what are you doing to generate leads for properties in your business? What's your strategy to find good flips? I know that's not the main thing you're doing, but you did mention to me before we got on the podcast that you are lining up a flip right now. So you'll do one or one here and there. Obviously, I would assume a guy such as yourself is making money on the buy.
Yes.
So what are your strategies right now to find deals?
Sure. So, and keep in mind, for people that are listening, like I've been doing this for 13 years now. So a lot of the work that I've done in the past is still returning dividends, right? So I'm a big believer of building relationships with people that would have access to these leads and not making real estate your dirty little secret, actually being okay talking about it with your friends and family and on social media once in a while, I think is important. Because frankly, hey, people are busier than ever and we don't have as much time, especially me with like 4 kids at home. I don't have as much time as I used to be going out to all the social events or, now it's like I either do stuff with my family or like I try to prioritize like real estate meetup type things. There's really not a whole lot of in between. Like I don't have a gym membership. I'm basically go in my basement. I got a full setup. I work out. I'm done. So not making it your dirty little secret. So not being afraid to let people know what you're doing and doing the work, right? Like one of the best things that people can do is literally make 3 phone calls every day to just people, either, people that touch real estate, other realtors, home inspectors, property managers, junk collectors. I just got a lead the other day from my HVAC guy. He's like, "Oh, I've done some of your furnaces in your homes, Kory. Like, you do really nice quality renovations." And I have a gentleman who's looking to retire and sell his property. His son doesn't want it, and it's kind of at the same standards as you. So I would feel bad connecting him to somebody that would just kind of run it in the ground. Like he would want to have some kind of a legacy of someone that's going to keep it in the same way, right? So got a lead there. But we're also doing some other things to generate our own leads, like flyers and ads and things like that too. So
Okay, like online ads,
yeah,
Facebook and such.
yeah.
Okay, I hear a lot of people are doing that, so that's something I got to tap into as well.
Yeah, but I literally just keep like a box of flyers in my car. If I see a house that needs, some work, I just pull over and drop it. Like you're right there anyways. It doesn't take that much longer to jump out of your car, drop a flyer.
So you just drop it in their mailbox, yeah. Yeah, that's another one. I was just talking to Rob Brake the other day, and he was saying that was one of the most productive things he ever did, was just he'd always have flyers with him. He'd spot a house that was rough and jump out of his car, throw a flyer. He's like, that one needs a flyer.
Yes, big time, man. And it's also something that's easily outsourceable too. So I've taught people before that wanted to work for me and learn real estate. I'm just like, okay, well, one of the things I'm going to do is pay you by the hour. I'm going to teach you how to drive for dollars and just go look for these opportunities. We usually break them into 3 categories, like, because we're looking for those 6 Ds, right? So typically if there's issues with the property, you're going to see more than like one issue with the property. So you're going to see like it needs a roof, windows, landscaping is messed up, broken down car on the front lawn, drunk on the front lawn. So if it hits like, let's say 4 of those things, we'd say that's like an A category. Like that's an A+ lead. So there's probably something going on in that house. Because if you're letting the outside of your house go, there's probably issues on the inside, and there's probably issues in your bank account, and everything else too.
There's usually got to be an issue or a reason for deferred maintenance, right? Like if they're not taking care of their property, like there's some sort of breakdown going on inside the house too, right?
Yeah, or they thought, hey, getting a house was great when their house was turnkey, and then 10 years later, it's like, all these big cash call items start to come up. So we'd say that's a good lead. Something that's like a medium type lead would be maybe it only hits 2 or 3 of those things. And we still make a note of it if we see one big cash item, like let's say if a house just needs a roof. Like still roofs are like $5,000 to $15,000 depending on the size and the pitch. So we still make a note of that. It's even if the house is boarded up, like literally we dropped a flyer at a house with boards on the windows. It looked like there was a fire there, and we got a phone call. We negotiated with the fellow. We ended up buying the house for $5,000. Crazy.
Serious?
Yeah.
In Canada.
It was a burnt out shell, but there was still a lot of value there. Like we could have torn down the house. I think the owner was playing with this too. Like I could tear down the house. That would cost me 15 or 20 grand, and then sell it for land value, which in that part of town, it just wasn't worth as much. If it was like a half kilometer further to the north, right? So he's like, I don't want to tear down a house just to sell it and make very little money. So he got a payday though from his insurance company for $210,000, and then just whatever you get for the rest of your house in this current state that it's in, you get to keep. So he's like, he already won the lottery.
He felt like he'd been paid already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And he could have went through the whole process, taken a year and worked with, a restoration company to rebuild it. It would probably be worth about $240,000. He's like, all that work to have a triplex again that I have to manage. And he's like, I'm just done. I got $210,000. I'm happy. So whatever I get for the house is a bonus. So he started off at $40,000, $30,000, $20,000, $10,000. We got him down to $5,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But we built a relationship with him, right? This took multiple visits and, getting in rapport with them and talking his language and making sure you're related to the person is important.
I wish I'd done that with a friend of mine's mother, real estate investor from back in the day in London. Somebody drove a truck into her rental property in London.
Wow.
I'm not going to give the exact location, but he brought it up and I'm like, I know that house. I'm like, tell her to sell it to me. I'll just take it over. Because he asked me, he's like, oh, my mom's thinking about rebuilding. The house got hit. I'm like, what was the address? And sure enough, same property. And I said, hey, I'd be comfortable paying this to him, but I never actually met or spoke with her directly, which is obviously the problem, right? I should have got in a room. But long and short of it is, it's been like 2 years, and she's still trying to settle with the insurance company and dealing with bylaws and trying to rebuild. And
it's challenging. I had my own triplex catch fire a couple of years ago, and that was interesting to rebuild it. So
going through that process, and especially if you're in an area where you're non-conforming, how will the municipality handle that? And can you rebuild what was there? Can you rebuild something a little bit better? And you obviously would want to take advantage of an opportunity.
We did, yes.
Yeah. So you were able to?
We were, yeah. So we had a triplex. We added really steep pitch roof, right? So we flattened out the roof and we raised the roof. Yeah. So because we were losing 4 feet all the way around the upper apartment. So that upper apartment used to be a pretty small 1-bedroom. We turned it into a really good sized 3-bedroom. And then the back was a really small 1-bedroom. We decided to do an addition on the back and add two large bedrooms. So it went from almost like a bachelor. It was a 1-bedroom, but you might as well call it a bachelor. And it's a good sized 2-bedroom now. So we added how many square feet to the house? 800 square feet. Using a lot of it was just like insurance money, because while you're there, it's just a little bit of extra drywall to do certain things, right? So I had to contribute probably about $80,000, but when you have a chance to build at $100 a square foot, I mean, that's great.
That's amazing. So the insurance company was okay with they said, we'll pay this much. Anything you do beyond that is on you.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So we took the money, we put some of our own money in, but we had our own challenges. Like when we went to do the addition in the backyard, it triggered an archeological assessment, which a lot of municipalities in the province have that, and that's when they literally want to come out and inspect what's in the ground. So they'll do these test holes, 1 foot by 3 feet. If they find any significant material like broken plates and cups, and so they found a 1940s smoke pipe, and that triggered. They're like, oh, this is significant. Now that triggers a phase 2. Phase 1 was only about $2,000 or $2,500. Phase 2 was $6,000. And 3 or 4 months, maybe even 6 months of waiting. It just got held up for so long. I'm like, I don't mind cutting the check, but can we speed this up at all? It sits on the municipality's desk. Yeah. They're short staffed. There's only a few people that deal with this stuff. So
yeah, that's the heritage, any of that stuff, environmental. You get into those issues and they can really kill your profits fast if you're paying private money.
They can. That's why I always tell people, you got to have reserves. You got to make sure that you're buying profitable real estate, because these things will happen. And if you're paying full price, then you're literally having to work a day job just to pay the meter to make some of these deals work, and you don't want that. So
yeah, absolutely. So just jumping back to this little shell you bought for $5,000, because that is the cheapest property I've ever heard being bought in Canada.
Yes,
congratulations. And what did you do?
We actually didn't even close on it. So we tied it up for 2 weeks, and that's when I just started ringing the phone, seeing who would buy it as a reno. So I ended up selling it to another local investor, even though looking back, there probably would have been other people that paid me a little bit more. So I just made a really quick $10,000 wholesale fee.
It's not
bad. I knew the next person, for do the math, I was making about $1,000 an hour on that. And I wanted to make sure the next investor, because they basically had to rebuild the whole house, right? So I want to make sure, okay, that you're not starting from behind the starting line. Let's make sure that you have a even playing field here to do it right and make it profitable.
That's kind of you. I know that not all wholesalers will do that. You know, a lot of wholesalers just want every last dime they can get out of it, right? And there's usually a buyer for it regardless. So
True. And sometimes their deals die too. So it's just like, man, why didn't you just take less and actually do a deal? Like I remember my first wholesale deal, I only made $1,000. And I'm like, I learned a lot, and I'm glad I did it. So to me, that was just a great experience. And now I've taken that to make, multitudes more. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So let's jump over to the church now. Cause I've been, seeing some of your videos on Matt's channel. I've been seeing some of your stories, and I know that you've been into development and you're starting to look at, more longer term plays, probably because the cash flow is taken care of by your portfolio. You're not worried about that.
Yeah. Like I don't have to work a day job anymore. So I do what I like to do in life, which is great. And I have done some bigger renovations. So I've done like $200,000, $300,000 type renovations. And this lead kind of fell into our lap. Me and my realtor in Sarnia, we were looking to do something bigger anyways. We're like, let's start looking at 12 plexes, 16, 24, some of these like smaller type buildings that the REITs aren't looking at. It's kind of like that in between. It's too big for most investors, too small for the REITs. Let's kind of look in that band. And we weren't getting accepted on different deals that were coming up. And frankly, there's not a lot of those deals in my hometown anyways. So this church just came up, through his network, and he just said, look, it was pretty close to his basically his father-in-law had the connection. So he's like, look, I wanted to, we've been wanting to do a partnership for a while anyways. So this is a great opportunity. And churches don't typically sell for a lot because they understand that there's going to be a lot of money involved in just doing anything significant with it. So I got it for a really good price, and it's going to be a lot of money though. Like it's a $4 million renovation.
Okay, so let's start with the acquisition cost on the building.
Sure.
What were you into?
So we bought it for $150 or $155.
Like 1,000?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Pretty
that is
crazy.
a small little one.
Well, it's a big building though, right? And it's it didn't go on the market. So again, off-market deal.
And it's in Sarnia?
It's in Sarnia.
Okay. And lot size, just for context, do you know roughly how big of a space that is?
We're on about 3/4 of an acre.
3/4 of an acre. Okay.
Yeah. But the value came when we changed the zoning. So just by changing the zoning, because right then it was, for some reason, the church was zoned as a duplex. I think it's because
it wasn't even zoned for like church use.
Well, it was a church, but it also had R2 zoning. I think it's because the church was built in two phases. They built a big addition 3 years later that was Sunday school rooms, and there's a gymnasium and stuff. So somehow they had R2 zoning. But we had to change that we had to actually get a special zoning designation for multifamily in that part of town. It was like an R5 dash something, because it was basically a custom zoning just for what we were looking to do.
So they created that for you.
Yeah, and we had some exceptions on parking allowances and this and that. Yeah. So we had to get some variances on.
How long of a process was that so you bought it not knowing for sure what you'd get, because you never know with development. You can think. How long of a process was it from when you took possession of the property to when you had the zoning changed? Yeah,
great question. So we got started right away. So as soon as we went firm on the deal, I believe that was in July, late June or early July of last year, we just got started right away. So we're not actually physically closing on this building until August. Mm-hmm. But the church was great. They let us come in and do measurements and, have other, engineers and stuff take a look at the building. And we would learn a ton throughout the process too, right? We're getting samples. Is there asbestos in the wall? Is that going to increase our price to doing construction and all these other things, right? So, and we wanted to get the zoning changed before the city council changed over. So there was a big city council changing of the guard. And that was in September. So literally within 3 months, the city didn't think we could get it all turned around, but we did, because it's more challenging to find some of these engineers and contractors in the summer to do their studies and surveys. Everything was like $3,000 to $5,000. Oh, you want a traffic study? $3,500, $5,000.
So were you doing it in conjunction with a site plan? So you were proposing a site plan application with a zoning change, all in conjunction.
Yeah. Yeah, we had our pre-meeting, so we sat down with the city. They supported the project. So we're like, okay, we're gonna go just start cutting checks, and they gave us the path. Here's your checklist. These are things you need to do to get to your September 26th public hearing meeting. And it was funny because the same day there was a really hot topic property that came up. It was like some wood field lot near the lake that some developer was proposing to cut down all the trees and develop houses on it. And my gosh, the birds and the frogs and the snakes are going to be affected. So it was a packed house. It was super intimidating. I'm glad that we brought our our planner that day to do all the speaking for us. So we're like, look, you've already written all the report for us. How about you do the talk for us? And we can just kind of say, hi, yeah.
So it was a public site plan hearing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not always the case. Usually those are
no, sometimes
delegated.
It's just like council chambers or whatever. But this was it was a big thing. You know, we're converting a church into apartment buildings, right? So
yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with it, site plan approval is what you have to go through if you want to intensify use of land. In most cases, if you want to build an apartment building, they want to know everything. You know, do we have sewage capacity? Can our roads handle this? What's it going to look like, and how does that fit with the neighborhood? And I'm sure they asked you a million other questions as well.
What do the neighbors think of it too, right? So it also goes to anybody can submit a complaint, and we're really glad that we did our community engagement. So we literally went around, knocked on doors. We had flyers for people to let them know, because as soon as the church did their last service, all these rumors started to spread, like, oh, it's going to be a homeless shelter. It's going to be a meth clinic. It's going to be, all these things that people just start talking. They have no idea. So we had to educate, we had an open house, we got renderings done so we could show people what we want to do, right? Again, another $3,000 to $5,000 for these renderings, but it's just part of the deal.
I remember trying to do a duplex, tear down and build, to take a single family down, build a duplex, and had to get an engineer stamped drainage plan. And by the time you do that, now you're into a few $1,000s for that survey a few $1,000.
Yes.
Everything, like you said, ends up being that way. Did you pay an urban planner as well?
I believe we did. Yes.
Yeah. Just for some advice and oversight. But it sounds like you guys kind of handled the process.
Yeah. Like what we did hire was a retired planner that used to work for the city of London, and then he was doing some freelance work in Sarnia. So we definitely had people in our corner. And I highly recommend if you're ever doing something that's out of your comfort zone, just go find an A player in that industry. Because even when I was rebuilding my triplex that caught fire, I worked with a planner who had been doing this for like 30 years in London. He just knew everybody at City Hall. Like he would just, even if his paperwork, if there was like some errors in it, they'd just be like, oh, hey, you missed something. He'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just change it right now. At least it's in, it's submitted. He knows the right people, and he knows to ask the right questions. And if you're not getting the answer you want, it's like, oh, do you mind if I speak to so-and-so and just, let's all come together on this. And just lots of times it's just a difference of opinions, and you just got to get everybody on board. So
yeah, there could be lots of different opinions in municipal government, I've noticed.
Yes. And whenever people ask me for advice and they're like, oh, the city said this, I'm like, you know what, call back tomorrow and ask for a different person, and you'll probably get a different answer. And look for the golden thread. There's probably going to be commonalities to what they're saying. Yep.
I had so a friend of mine and I both went in to do, we wanted to build a second unit on the back of our existing building.
Okay.
And we were given X number, like you have a 40% allowance. You can build 40% of the existing gross floor area in the existing building. So I wanted to get close to 1,000 square feet. I was trying to push it. So I wanted to do the furnace room outside of the unit, because that had been a way to sneak around the rule. So you could add the furnace room. It wouldn't steal from your allowable floor area. Well, I apparently went on the wrong day, and the wrong guy saw mine. He's like, oh, we don't allow that anymore. My friend literally went after me. And they threw up a stink. Like he like talked to everybody. He's like, if he comes in here, you don't let him do this. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh, wow.
And then my friend came in after me, got his in, no problem. It's just one day, another could be different. It's the same thing with lenders, right? You could have one person from one bank say no, go to a different person in that bank and get a yes. I've had it happen.
I know.
Yeah. So persistence is worth something.
It is. And sometimes having someone in your corner that'll just go do the fighting for you. They've already done the fight 30, 40 times, and sometimes it's worth paying them a couple $1,000 to just figure out a way to get it done.
Absolutely. So I want to And I really love that advice. The paying the expert, I think, is a gold nugget on this episode.
Yeah, sometimes people are just like so close-fisted or trying to lone wolf it themselves. And I've always been a big believer of like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to write the check for the right person. Do your due diligence. Obviously, don't just bring anybody onto your team, but you'll go further faster if you can just jump through the hoops a lot quicker, right? And if you're trying to, yes, you should educate yourself. You should be competent in these things and you should have an understanding of it. But I didn't want to become an expert planner when we were doing some of this stuff at the church, but I understood conceptual level what we were trying to do, which is important. So
absolutely. Okay, so what did you end up spending on the planning costs? I'm assuming you're done that part now.
Oh man, yeah, the initial planning costs are done. So I think we spent about $50,000 there.
That's actually low compared to what I thought it might have been.
Yeah, like our permit was $5,400.
Permit for the whole renovation build?
Oh, sorry, that was the cost, not the permit. That was the cost to do a zoning change.
Oh, zoning. Okay, zoning change. Yeah.
So that was our initial. So now we've actually got approval. We were waiting for months and months and months to do. Our first model was going to be affordable housing. So there was some grant money out there, and there was some great mortgage terms that we could get if we went the affordable housing model. And we didn't get any of the county money because you had to be partnered up with like a local organization, like let's say Community Living or March of Dimes or something of that nature. We wanted to keep it private because we have heard some horror stories of just like, you open it up to an organization and then you're waiting for months until they bring you someone to fill one of your units. And it's like, this is not a charity. Like we're operating this to make a profit.
Okay. So you decided not to do that. You kept it just regular rental.
Well, even then we tried to apply for the CMHC affordable housing mortgage programs, and they're pretty favorable. They're like 50-year AMs. The interest rates were super low, like 1.7, 1.8%. You do have to do like 80 to 90% of market rents for 15 to 20 years. But when you do the math, it all made sense. And then they didn't approve our application because they're like, oh, the vacancy rate in Sarnia is too high. So more of this money is going out towards Toronto and places that have a really low vacancy rate and they need the units. It's like, okay, would have been nice to know that maybe 6 months ago and 4 phone calls ago when we were engaging you guys. You could have just let us know, like the big pendulum is vacancy rate. So I don't think your properties or your project's going to get approved. So now we're just going to do it conventionally, do it all ourselves. And so we're going to be paying even more planning to get, tweak our design and stuff a little bit more because we were doing it with like barrier free and some of these other things, which we may not do as much now. So.
Okay. So purchase 150, planning 50,000 so far. And that included the zoning change?
That included the zoning change.
And then, so now you're going to have more planning and
more planning,
permitting, all that stuff. So what do you think you're looking at for the rest of it?
Fees. We just know like our build out cost is like right now it's sitting at 3.8,
including those fees,
million. Yeah.
On top of what you paid already.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but the value at the end of the day, it's going to be worth 5 million at least. So maybe maybe low fives.
So purchase 150. Planning 50, 3.8 million to build and get to that stage to get to fully finished.
Yep.
And is there an HST implication here?
I am not sure. But
okay. So we won't go there for now.
Gonna handle that. Yeah.
We'll keep it simple. Okay. So then you're in for, let's just see here.
Just over 4 million. And the cool part is that when they were figuring out their build costs, our price per square foot, some people are really focused on price per square foot, right? When you build a new house, I mean, it's hard to build a new house under $200 a square foot. So our additions, anywhere we're creating brand new square footage outside of the existing shell, we got our price per square foot down to like, I think it's like 150, 160. And then within the shell, it's like $100 a square foot. So it's great savings there. So that's because some people are just like, why don't you just tear it down and start over again? We're like, there's got to be value in the shell. It's really boxy. It looks a lot like a high school.
Okay. Yeah, that helps. And I think renovation costs, like people have asked me, like, what does it cost to renovate versus, do new construction? And it's a hard thing to answer because it really depends on the status of that current building. Like how bad is it? If sometimes it's nothing. It's a walk in the park. It's some paint and some drywall mud and, take out this wall. And other times it could be much, much more than that. You'd hope not.
Yeah, and the bigger the project, there's more scale there. There's some economies in the numbers. Definitely, we chose a really good value company that, I mean, the prices were all over the board, plus or minus like $3 million, and we're like, okay, this one's
do the reno.
Yeah, we're like, this one's too low. This one's probably scary. This one is like probably a number like that's a I don't want to do it kind of number, but I'll do it if I'm going to make multiple millions of dollars doing it. And then this company, they do like 45 of these projects a year. We went to their office and we saw a map and we're like, are all those pins like your past projects? And they're like, no, that's our current projects. Like we have a lot on the go right now. We're like, yeah, you guys are a good fit for this. So
nice. And okay, so regarding this project, so $4 million all in, does that include financing costs, or you got financing on top of that?
It's gonna be a pretty quick build. So, financing, like we're looking at 6 months. So I guess financing would be on top of that.
Okay, so maybe we'll allow a couple $100,000 for financing, or $100,000 maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, what's the math on that? Real quick here. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be just over $100,000. Like, not crazy bad. Depends on the interest rate we get. But at 6% for half a year, we're looking at $120,000.
Okay, and let's just total this up. So you're 4.1 million in. You figure your total value is $5 million. What do you think you're going to do for financing at the end of that?
We're gonna go for conventional type multifamily.
Will you do try and do like a CMHC insured 85% loan to value?
We've thought about it, and there are those programs out there. At the end of the day, I think we have to weigh the pros and cons, because right now, just by changing the zoning of the property, it went from what we bought it for, like we've got about 200 or 220 into it right now. It's worth more like $500,000 or $600,000. So that's a good chunk of our equity there, which helps. Me and my business partner, we're open to either option.
Okay, so you've got some options there. I think the real takeaway here is you've got, at least from what looks like from today's estimations, you've got $900,000 of equity you've created. So you said something earlier, which I think is really impactful, and that's I was $1,000 an hour on that deal. Have you looked at this project and sort of calculated what your time is equating to into this project and how worthwhile it is?
We should have. There's been so many hours involved, and I guess I should have been tracking it like a lawyer. We knew it was going to be a good deal to begin with, and if it didn't make sense for us, we knew we could have. First of all, either we had just a big building that we could have turned into, a gym or our own office, or just a place for our kids to play in, or try to revive it as a church. I've got some friends that are running churches. So we just knew that we had so many different options that it was almost like a no-lose type scenario. When you have that little in, like I think it was like $12 a square foot that we paid for it.
Oh, it's incredible. At 150, who wouldn't buy it? I mean, it's sort of a lower risk approach, because you're in for about $200,000 on something to find out if it's going to work to turn into something that's $5 million.
Yeah.
And that's the key with development. I think a lot of people, I do get this question sometimes. I was just speaking with someone yesterday about development and, what to do, what to look for. And I've looked at a lot of stuff from a development standpoint. And the conclusion I often come to is it's just not going to be profitable by the time I factor in the financing, by the time you factor in everything. Like, you'll find guys ready to sell their piece of land for $2 million.
I know. When
even if you took that land for free, you would have a hard time making a profitable deal. So
that's right.
You really got to know how to evaluate these deals. And be in, this is why I think it's best if you can be into a situation where it works. There's a plan B. There's a decent plan B. There's a decent plan C if it doesn't work out the way you want it to with development.
Yeah, and I don't mind taking some risk, right? But I always want to make sure before I buy any kind of property that there's multiple exit strategies. Like I bought 10 acres of raw land in Sarnia. It's brownfield, so we know that we have to clean it up and mitigate it before we can do anything with it. But I just thought, what? We could do 34 building lots if we could develop the whole thing, or we could do the front that backs onto the road where there wasn't any brownfield land and just seal off the rest and say it's going to be a park. We could just do one big building lot. Yeah. We could just do one big playground for my kids. We could wait till the technology gets cheap enough where they already have the technology where they can scan the earth just like a fish finder in the water. They can do that. It's about $15,000 a day. They can scan the earth, find the hot spots. Then you know exactly where you have to do your remediation work, right? So,
okay.
So that cost of technology is going to keep coming down and down. So it's one of those things where we did get it cheap enough that we can hold it and just wait, right? So.
Well, yeah, it never hurts to be hanging on to land, especially with the way our government keeps changing and adding incentives to add new units, right? Like if you had a property, like I have properties that have extra room in the backyard, and now the new bill that was passed should be allowing a third unit. I might be able to build, right now I'm looking at a potential to maybe be able to build 2 units onto the back of my student rentals.
That's right.
That'd be kind of cool.
It's just a matter of getting the cost of construction down, right? As things are happening, like there's literally like 3D construction, and they're like 3D printing, not 3D printing, homes in like a day or two, right? Out of like interesting materials. So, hopefully it will get cheaper with technology, because right now just to pay the trades to come in, like with the cost of wood and metal and everything, it's getting very expensive.
It's gotten insane. So I was able to build townhouses for around 110 a square foot, 2016 to 2018. And this new project I'm working on now, I budgeted about 140 a square foot. And that doesn't include anything outside. All the servicing, all the work outside is on top of that. That's just the building.
Yes.
And and I'm pretty efficient. Like you could pay a lot more than that.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
That's good pricing.
It's pretty concerning the way things have gone. Framing that project, $6.50 a square foot was the most I paid, $6 to $6.50. Now quotes are starting $10 to $12. You're doing well if you're getting a $12 quote.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
It is.
How does that happen in 2 to 3 years? And then on top of that, the lumber has gone up, 60%. So I always look at the economic drivers, right? If I'm trying to predict what's going to happen in the housing market, well, if it's getting that much more expensive to build new, that resale has to go up in value too.
That's right.
And then that's why Ontario is in this crazy crisis right now of how do we have housing when it costs so much to build.
And how many townhouses are you doing?
So right now I'm doing blocks of 5.
5, cool.
So blocks of 5. That project from before was blocks of anywhere from 6 to 8.
Yep.
With one of them had a really big cinder block firewall in the middle, which wasn't fun coordination wise.
No kidding. Have you looked into any metal framing, like skeleton framing or anything like that? Because I was actually looking at development up in Collingwood, and it was 30 units, doing it in blocks of 5 to 10. And they said, yeah, you should look into this technology, right? So it might be a little more expensive, but you save time wise. Like literally the guys are it's like putting Lego together.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I think this is a valuable discussion for anyone listening. There's new technology coming around all the time. Talk to different contractors, find out what different options they have, because some of them might have access to a strategy that may allow you to build something that wouldn't have otherwise worked. So, keep your ear to the ground, go to meetups, talk to people, find out what they're doing. Like
for sure.
That's always what I'm trying to do, because you never know when you might get that little gold nugget.
Oh, there's literally people building buildings out of, there's a lady in Edmonton, she's doing them out of sea canisters, right? They're all prefabbed in their factory, and they just bring them in.
Sea canisters.
Yeah, they literally blow out the walls in between them, so they can actually get like open concept and all that sort of stuff. It's
like shipping containers. Like,
yeah. Containers.
Yeah. I've seen that. Although I've run the numbers on that, and I didn't really think it would actually end up being cheaper by the time you plumb it and run electrical.
Yeah, it's good for maybe just like an infill house, but not probably for townhouses. So yeah,
we're really nerding out on construction right now.
That's right.
So Kory, what would you want to share? I know we've covered in development, your rental portfolio a little bit, some of your numbers. Is there anything else you would want to share with our listeners and viewers?
I think one of the biggest things I try to echo out there is, obviously take it upon yourself to be a sponge and learn as much as you can about real estate. There's so many different rabbit holes you can go down, but pick the one that makes sense, that really speaks for your personality. If someone's like a real social person, then maybe Airbnb is for you, because you like to meet all the tenants and there's that constant turnover and stuff like that. For someone like you or I that are really numbers focused, like, hey, burring things and buying something undervalued and fixing it up, or buying something to be a potential development for profit, that's a good fit. But I think the big key is patience, and take it upon yourself to become the expert in that strategy that you do choose. Because with patience, and when you work on your base knowledge and your fundamentals, you're not building you're learning on a house of cards, right? So you have a strong foundation, you can go really far with it. If you have limited knowledge and you're not willing to spend the time to go out to the meetup groups and learn from the different people and listen to these podcasts, then you're not going to go too far, right? So be patient. Pick the right strategy for you and learn as much as you can. Be an expert in that strategy.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And to take it one further, like look at the different key figures in different areas out there and decide, what parts of what they do I like and what parts don't I like, right? You don't have to wholeheartedly follow everything someone does. If they do A, B, and C well, and you don't really like the way they're doing D, and F, what you can just pick and choose what works, right? But make sure that it works holistically as an approach.
Definitely. We can learn something from everybody out there, and you can pick and choose what you want to implement in your own portfolio for sure.
So what's next for you?
Next for me, well, really looking forward to getting through some of these bigger projects that we're taking on. And I think it's going to get to a point where, if I were to look at my real estate investing career, I'm probably already a good part of the way up the mountain. And it's going to get to a point where how much is enough, right? Like, how much more do you need? Because if I were to sell off my portfolio right now, so we're over $10 million, I could just go and lend that money and be just a money lender, right? So that's pretty cool.
Do you think you get net 10 out of it, or your 10 overall asset value?
No, 10 overall asset value. We're probably 50% profit in that right now. So doing pretty well. I think it'll get to a point where we're definitely already starting to sell off some of our smaller holdings. We're questioning some of the things that we've had for 10 years. Does it still make sense in our portfolio? And so we're either getting into bigger deals now, bigger developments, or probably money lending in the future.
Yeah, money lending.
Because people say that income properties are passive, but you're creating a job and a business for yourself. You can systemize them, but you still have to be the person at the steering wheel leading the ship. And if all I had to do is write checks and make sure that they were good deals, that would probably be a little bit more passive. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you said a little bit more. Even that's not passive, right? You're still going to do a couple of things. There still could be situations where you have to collect, so to speak. Yes. And it is more passive. But I think that people are mistaking themselves if they don't see themselves as an entrepreneur. If you're a real estate investor, you're an entrepreneur. It's not just set it and forget it. And people who think that end up really regretting getting into it.
Oh, for sure. And sometimes they hit the lottery when they first get their first turnkey property and they get a great tenant. They're like, oh, this is easy. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of had the perfect storm of, you did win the lottery in the beginning. It's not always going to be like that. You just pulled a really good card in the beginning. There's going to be some challenging cards. There's 52 cards in a deck. So yeah,
I pulled all the challenging ones to start. So
it's good though. You learn.
I had no misconceptions that it was easy. Actually, maybe I did for the first little bit, and then I truly regretted that. But I think, those moments those are tuition.
Oh, you learn way more from those moments. Like you don't learn very much when everything's going your way. That's
How
for sure.
much do you wish that we had a true post-secondary institution in Canada that taught real strategies to build wealth? Like, how cool would that be if it was a true institution that actually had a course on money mindset and how to think about money and how to invest, what investments do and don't work, how real estate's different, how you can play the game and take advantage of inflation, and how money loses its value by leveraging. Like, if we were taught this stuff, how different would our society be?
I think the government would be pretty scared.
They'd be pretty screwed. How are they going to tax all this?
That's right.
Find a way to tax it all.
That's right. But, for sure. I mean, people reach out to me for mindset. I just spoke on a stage a couple of weeks about mindset. They don't teach that in school. They're not even teaching cursive anymore. They're not teaching how to write a check. I had a 26-year-old person rent one of my units. She worked for TD Bank. This was about 8 years ago. She didn't know how to write a check. It's just like, I know e-transfers I had to teach her how to write a check, and I also had to teach her how to do an e-transfer. So it's just the financial literacy is so low. But again, our reach is so big now too for things like you. They can listen to your podcast. They can learn, right? They can take their spare time, instead of binging on Netflix, they can actually learn about becoming wealthy, which is awesome.
Yes, and on that note, I would say for people who like this conversation is like a little high up there, and we're kind of talking about some more advanced concepts, go back to the beginning, because like the first 10 episodes just focus on BRRRR and like the basic concept, which is where, I don't know if you would agree, is that where you would say people start if you're going to real estate invest and you're coming in with minimal capital? Is the BRRRR strategy where you would recommend somebody start?
BRRRR strategy is really good. I like Airbnb now. Like, I mean, I literally met a lady last year, and her son was 14 at the time, and he's Airbnb-ing out his bedroom, and his parents were okay with it because they had to agree, right? It's their house. He goes and sleeps on the couch. He Airbnbs out his room for $50-$60 a night, and he's making money. He doesn't have to be a homeowner, right? And I'm sure there's younger kids out there too doing it.
So you're talking about the re-rental strategy where you find something, rent it out, and then you put it on Airbnb?
Yeah. So you don't have to be a physical homeowner to do it. You could, do a master lease and then just get permission from the landlord to do it. There's so many opportunities out there. You could wholesale, you could find deals, you could bird dog for somebody else. But the BRRRR strategy is very powerful. If you can learn the BRRRR strategy, You're buying properly, you're renovating properly, you're putting the right people in the building, you're doing like things favorable in the terms of the bank, and then you can wash, rinse, repeat. You can bring on a money partner once you get maxed out, keep doing the same kind of strategy. And it's an invaluable skill. If you can take the BRRRR strategy to different parts of your life or business, all of a sudden you're getting a higher multiple when you go to sell your business. It's important, right? To be able to create value out of something is very important. A lot of people just expect value. They're like, oh, I did I did some of the work. Can I get all the value? It's like, no, you have to actually go through all the steps and follow the systems to unlock the true value. And that's how life works, right?
Well, the opportunity though to add value there is huge, right? Because
not everything is going to have the right opportunity.
No, not everything will, right? But when you're adding rental income, if you can make a tenant, if you satisfy their need for value and they love your place, now they're willing to pay more. Now you've created a more valuable asset because it can earn more. And yeah, like you said, you got to complete that work, and you'll know if you didn't because you don't rent it out. Therefore, you don't get the higher income. You don't get the refinance. There's a good feedback system involved.
Oh yeah, the marketplace will tell you. Everything will tell you
very quickly whether you're doing it right or wrong. So yeah, that's why I go seek out somebody who's doing it well. Don't just try and do it blindly. There's enough resources out there that people can do that. So Kory, if somebody was trying to reach you, what would be the place that we should send them?
Yeah, best place to find me. I'm fairly active on social media. You can find me on Facebook under my name. You can find me on Instagram under my name. I've got my own domain, so KoryMackinnon.com. Yeah, I'm pretty active in the Ontario real estate meetup, network of things. I try to be active, and it's one of those things you got to make the decision, right? To just commit to being out there and expanding your network, which is what I am. So I really appreciate the opportunity here to be on your podcast and continue to meet some of your listeners and stuff too.
Yeah, well, it's been great having you here. And like I said, I heard your name a million times. Everyone's talking about you. You're on Matt McKeever's videos. I'm like, why hasn't he been on my show yet?
There you go.
No, I really appreciate it. So if you're not doing all this real estate stuff, what are you doing? What's your passions, hobbies outside of real estate?
Well, we have 4 kids under the age of 7 right now, so it keeps us very busy, but we love to travel. I'm a big health and fitness geek. Some people call that being a health hacker or whatever, but I just feel that, your number one wealth is actually your health, because if you don't, I want to be active and doing cool stuff into my 80s. So if you don't look after your health, it doesn't matter how much money you make, right? I've had chances to make way more money, C-level type positions, but I've turned them down because I'm going to lose my lifestyle that I want. I wake up every day. It's kind of like a Saturday. I can choose to do whatever I want. And I don't want to be so stressed out to the point where I don't want to work out. I'm grabbing the wrong food choices and everything else just because I'm stressed or I'm short on time or whatever. So big into health, and, I just love to give back and, teach other people the fundamentals of real estate too. Right. So I think it's important because they don't teach us stuff in school that, it's important to, once you get to a certain level, to also start to give back too.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why I'm trying to be on, different YouTube channels and different podcasts to let people know that it is totally possible. I didn't come from a whole lot when I was young, but it's actually, when you look at the stat, how many people are first generation millionaires versus second generation. I mean, it's like, go make it happen yourself. Like, you don't need to be given very much to go make it happen.
Not anymore. You just need to know the system. You need to go find the people who are doing it. Find people like Kory who are doing it and take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, or like yourself too, man. You're doing very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're plant-based, are you not?
Majority, yeah.
Mostly,
so
okay.
I still do some eggs and fish and stuff like that, but not a big fan of red meat, not a fan of chicken, pork.
That's your health hack, yeah. All right. So keeping it healthy there.
I'm just a big fan of fresh and, organic. It's got so much flavor, and when you're a healthy person, your taste buds are healthy. Like, you feel you can taste the flavors. Sounds kind of boring, but I'm just like a big fan of just like give me a big bowl of salad, man, and I'll go to town on it.
I need to change my taste buds to want that. You got to train them, right? I didn't like coffee when I first drank it, so
there you go.
Yeah, there's some time to change. But anyways, Kory, I hope you enjoyed this process. I just wanted to help people get to know you a little bit better and what you do at all this. So thank you so much for coming, and keep me in the loop on how things are going with that development. I'm definitely going to want to hear, and I'll post your updates. I'd love to keep our listeners and viewers apprised.
Cool. Excellent.
All right.
All right,
Thanks.
folks. Have a great day. Have a great week. Make it special.
Hey guys, thanks for watching today's episode. If you have not already done so, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. If you're on YouTube, please make sure you click that like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Leave me a comment below. And while you're at it, why not share this episode with somebody that you think it can help? I would really appreciate it, and it's going to help this podcast grow and help build the community around it. Thanks a lot. We'll see you on the next episode.